You're listening to episode number 29.
Welcome to the Inner Singer Podcast, providing tools and techniques to strengthen your inner singer, your beliefs, your confidence, your mindset. And now, your host for the Inner Singer Podcast, Mike Goodrich.
Well, hey there, everyone. Mike Goodrich here. Thank you so much for listening to the Inner Singer Podcast, episode 29, and welcome again. You know, today I'd like to talk about something that was inspired by a student and a friend. Started out as a student, now he's a buddy of mine, but also a student. And, kind of started out by something that this is inspired by something that he said the other day that I thought was really great. And I don't know if enough singers look at this particular thing that I'm going to talk about this way. But he said, I'm not so concerned right now with the sound. Because he's doing some things, he's doing some wonderful things, but some of the sounds that he's doing right now are unfinished sounds, of course, because it's not all put together, it's not all matured, it's not all grown up. And so some of the sounds are unfinished. In other words, really not performable, but establishing the kind of a condition in his voice that will eventually produce great sounds. And sometimes he does produce great sounds, but the ones he was talking about were not great sounds yet. But he said, what I'm really more interested in, and the reason I love to sing, is because I love the feeling that I'm beginning to get, where I feel like I'm flying. He goes, I love the feeling. And I said, that's really, really good. Because so many of us, and certainly I fell into this category for years and years, I was only concerned with what it sounded like. As a matter of fact, I didn't even have a frame of reference for what it should feel like. I mean, I was in the era where people were pushing pianos with their diaphragms, and there was all this muscle involved and all this strength and all this kind of thing. And I mean, this completely reminds me of years ago when I went to, back in the 80s. And I went to New York. It was for the first time I'd ever been to New York. And I loved, as I've mentioned before, these two tenors, Mario Delmonico and Franco Corelli. You actually should YouTube these guys, even if you're not interested in opera, just to hear two of the most amazing voices that ever lived. But anyway, so, I was sort of convinced that I could become one of these. So, and I'd never seen them sing. I'd only heard them on record. And because their voices are so huge, and because singing was so much work for me, I just put two and two together and thought, well, if they're singing that big and that loud, it must be that difficult. They just must be really strong. So I just tried to get really strong and stronger and stronger and stronger. Sadly, that became sort of like Dumb and Dumber because strength wasn't what it was about. But anyway, I digress. So anyway, here I am in New York in about 1985 or something like that. And, I go to the Metropolitan Opera bookstore. And I say, do you guys have any videos? This is back in the days of videos, right? Do you guys have any videos of old opera singers like Delmonico, Corelli and these guys? And I mean, it was like all of a sudden I was in a movie because the guy kind of motions me over with his finger, says, come here. And he said, and he writes down this name and he hands it to me and he says, go run over to Paddleson's. That was the most famous bookstore at the time for music scores. And even now to this day, I don't know if it's pronounced Paddleson's or Paddleson's. But anyway, it was a really famous store, probably still is, in New York. Any of you from New York know probably exactly what it is and what it's called, how to pronounce it. But anyway, so this guy said, here, and tell him, I don't know, Jim sent you or whatever. He says, but, keep it kind of on the down low. And I'm thinking, what is this? So anyway, I head on over to Paddleson's /Paddleson's and track this guy down. And I said, yeah, listen, this guy Jim from the opera shop over at the Metropolitan Opera sent me over for some videos for Delmonico and Corelli and some old videos. And he goes, oh, shh, okay, come here. Takes me into this back room and opens this drawer, this file cabinet of all these videos. And I guess they're bootleg videos. I don't know what they are at the time. But anyway, he said, I've got Delmonico doing this. I've got Corelli doing that. I've got this, that, and the other thing. And I think each one was $100 at the time. And I bought 4 of them. So I said, yeah, I'll take that, and that. So I bought $400 worth, not having a clue what I was getting, not knowing if they were going to be any good or if they were going to just be, I don't know if I was being scammed and they were going to split the money. I didn't know what was going on. But anyway, I thought I'd take a chance because I'd never seen these guys sing, ever. This was like obviously 30 years before YouTube or any of that. And so I got them. And off I went home, flew home to San Jose at the time and unpacked my suitcase and headed over to my dad's and said, Dad, look at this. Look what I got. And popped into the VCR, and there it was. It was legitimate. And I don't know if they were mislabeled or what. I don't know why I happened to watch this first, but I think I popped in something that had an old Italian tenor named Beniamino Gigli, who was fabulous. He lived to be well into his 80s, sang great forever, even though in his mind he said he was only in good voice 3 times in his whole life. So this is the kind of standards this guy had, I guess. But anyway, rather perfectionism. But anyway, it's fabulous. So anyway, I'm watching him sing, and my jaw is just dropping. He sings an aria from Cavalleria Rusticana, and it doesn't matter if whoever's listening to this doesn't know opera. It's of no consequence at all. Suffice to say, it's a difficult aria. He sang really strong and really high, and when he went up for the high note, he looked like he was doing absolutely nothing. And I was just watching him. My dad was watching him. And I'd never seen up close these kinds of guys at this caliber. So I had no concept of how easy it was. And I thought, oh my, what's going on here? And he just pops out this note. We rewound it a bunch of times, trying to figure out if he's lip syncing. And he's not. He's singing live. And I was just totally stunned. And at that time, the thought that went through my mind is, and I'll keep this totally clean, what the heck am I doing? I'm over here with elastic bands around my waist, pushing against them, trying to support, trying to move pianos, acting like I'm lifting a 300-pound weight. And this guy, you can't even see him breathe, and he's standing there, looks like he's doing nothing, singing these high notes that are just glorious. And then I watched Corelli, I watched Delmonico, and I saw the same thing. What the heck have I been tricked into by not being exposed to how easy this actually is? So anyway, I tell you that story because I really, really want to drive home. Number one, how easy singing is when you're balanced and coordinated. I have sung the loudest, strongest notes I've ever sung in my life have been the most easily produced, as if I was doing nothing. And when that's happened to me, and it certainly doesn't happen all the time, but when that's happened to me, I've just been blown away. And I remember what my dad used to have an expression. He says, no, it's really easy for them. He goes, they're stealing the money. Meaning that it's so easy when they're singing an opera. It's so easy that all the money they get paid, they're just, they're stealing the money because this is so easy. And they're making it look hard, right? So anyway, number one, it is supposed to be stupidly easy. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not energy involved, but it's supposed to be very easy. Now, what my friend and student said about flying, he says, I feel like I'm taking off. I feel like I'm flying. And that's the feeling I want. I want to come back to that because so many of us are concerned with the sound. What's the finished product like? What does it sound like? What does it sound like to me? What does it sound like to other people? What's going on with the sound? That's all I care about. Let me balance this vowel. Let me do this. Let me tweak that. My tone quality. Let me get this going. Let me get that going. And we lose complete sight of the feeling of it. And when we get, I'll go out on a limb here. Generally, if we're not being tricked. Now I'll tell you another story in just a second that will make sense. If we're along the right lines, if we're studying or if we have an idea what balance is in our voice and we're really working towards that and we have the proper wiring so that we really, really do understand when we're tense and when we're not tense, I'm talking about, like I said, most of the people that follow my stuff are intermediate to advanced. Now, that doesn't mean that some of you can't be beginners, as I said in the last show, and that's totally fine. Welcome everybody. But, for some reason, most people are intermediate and advanced that manage to find me. And, so they've been around the block a few times with this whole singing thing. And most people, when they've been around the block with this whole singing thing, will finally come to a point where if they're looking at my stuff, they've already come to that point where it's not just about the voice. They realize it's about some deeper things. But now we're going deeper into the voice and the feeling of the voice. Now, let me digress really quickly here. Let's sort of sidestep into a story of a buddy of mine that I knew years and years ago. When I was studying opera down here in the 80s in Los Angeles, and another buddy of mine was just a phenomenal guitar player. And he was studying voice, but pop. And he said, hey, my teacher gave me an aria. And I said, oh, really? Yeah, he said, Amor ti vieta. And I said, oh, cool, sing it for me. So he sang it, and I thought it was kind of like, he looked, and this guy was a good friend, so I didn't even know what to say. I'll tell you what I said in a minute. But, so he sings, and it's kind of like that Michael Bolton takeoff on Saturday Night Live, the guy who imitates Michael Bolton. And I mean, his veins were sticking out so far. And this is nothing against Michael Bolton. I think what he does when he does it's great. It's a great sound. He's a great songwriter. So I'm just saying the Saturday Night Live skit thing where the guy's veins are just sticking out and he just looks like he's killing himself, right? Well, that's what this guy looked like. He managed to scream his way through it. And I was like dumbfounded. I had no idea what to say. So what I actually said was, geez, man, you made it. How'd that feel? Oh, great. And I'm like, really? Oh, it felt good? Oh, yeah. It feels like nothing. And, mind you, this guy's head was about to explode. He was so tense. His veins were sticking out. His larynx was going up through his nose. I mean, but the reason I bring this whole thing up is because in his wiring, that he didn't feel that. He was not aware of the sensations involved with singing. To him, that felt good. So I'm assuming that probably most of us are past that, and we're actually dialed into, okay, this is tense, this isn't tense. We're more aware of what's going on in our body, in our instrument, as far as our voice goes. Okay, so I'm presupposing that you are probably there, and not back where this fellow was, because this guy was like, if you clench your arm, take your right hand and clench it, so you've got a fist, but your arm is really tight. Imagine that it had always been like that. And somebody said, hey man, or woman, your arm is really tight. And you say, no, it's not. No, really it is. Here, let me relax that. So, they kind of start massaging it and your hand opens up and you let go of the clenched fist. You say, wow, man, my hand was really tight. I had no idea. I pretty much think that that's what was going on with this fella. That's just how he always sang. So he wasn't in tune at all with anything other than that. That's how he was wired. I'm assuming and supposing that we're kind of past that with our voices. So now, assuming and presupposing that we are past that with our voice, we have a framework now. We have a sense of what is easy and what isn't easy. And what would really serve us is if we begin to drift away from what does this sound like into what does this feel like? How can I get this to feel even easier? Like I'm flying, like I'm soaring, really buoyant, really spinny, really light. Any adjective that you can think of that describes the feeling of real freedom in your voice. I think that's what we want to begin to focus on. And that's how I bring the voice and the voice technique back to the whole inner singer right now thing, because we're going to make a mind shift from how does this sound to how does this feel? Because I can almost guarantee you, once it feels good and easy and balanced and lighter and buoyant and free, the ultimate sound and the resulting sound from that feeling is going to be terrific. But if it's feeling tight and heavy and stuck, then, the ultimate sound is probably not going to be very good. So what is the use of focusing on the sound? Trying to get it focused and trying to do this and trying to do that? Who cares? Let's focus on the feeling and then listen to the sound after that and say, wow, this feels great. And the ultimate sound is amazing, because I guarantee you, the people that you like, the people that you idolize, the people that you want to be like, generally, if they're great singers, and I'm assuming again that they're great singers, it feels good. It feels easy. It feels free. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about people that are great singers and stylists, but don't necessarily have good vocal techniques. That's a whole group of folks that I love as well, and I don't feel it appropriate to really name names or pass my judgment on that in a sort of public forum. I don't think that that's kind, but you know who I mean. I mean, think of singers that have phenomenal techniques. I mean, in pop singing right now, Beyonce's one. She has a great technique. She's awesome. She's really, really a terrific singer. Think of some opera singers. There's some Broadway singers, phenomenal techniques. And then you move into other people that we love to listen to. We're huge fans. Their songs are great. They have great voices, but from a technical standpoint, you wouldn't call them technically good singers. You'd call them great singers, but not if they're being judged by, are their voices balanced? Are they making the bridges? All this kind of technical jargon that some of us, really care about and have to care about with a particular genre of music. So I hope I'm being a little bit clear about that. And what I mean by that is the ones that are balanced, technically, it feels great and it's easy and it's buoyant and it's light and it's, free. The ones that are great singers, but it's not balanced from a technical standpoint, it may not feel that great. And we may like the sound. The sound may be, wow, that sounds really, really, really cool. Great sound. But that's not what we want to go for. Because if we go for that sound, that may be their particular sound based on things that they don't even do technically correctly, then what we're going to do is we're going to imitate their bad habits to try and get a sound that may work for them. And they may be able to do that forever and not hurt themselves. They may, just like I know a buddy of mine whose mother is 88 years old and smokes like crazy and drinks like crazy and just went to the doctor and, oh, she's fine. She's doing great. I mean, it kind of baffles me. So, if you listen to a singer that seems to be breaking all the technical rules, they wouldn't be the one that you really wanted to emulate from the sound standpoint. What you want to do is find what feels great and then see what your ultimate sound is. At least that is my suggestion. So go for the feeling and not just for the sound. And when it feels great, listen to what it sounds like. So that is it for today. I think that's a really good thing to do is if you've been listening to the sound, and we're singers, we always listen to the sound, right? That's why we sing. We love to sing. We love to express. We want it to sound good. But let's make a little bit of a shift from the sound to what does this feel like? And then see what the ultimate sound is once we're really free and balanced and connected and coordinated. And then let's see what the sound is like. Cool? So let's do that for a little while, and I will see you or talk to you in the next episode. Thanks for being with me. Comments are always welcome. Feedback's always welcome. If you have any questions or anything you'd like me to cover in a podcast, please don't be shy. Let me know. And I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Inner Singer Podcast. And please share this with all of your singing friends. And head on over to iTunes and subscribe. And if you found it of value, give us a nice rating. Thanks so much.